going live.
Quite a good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. So lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. And tonight I'm going to be speaking to Rudie Rousseau, and we're going to be talking about a very, very sensitive subject, but it's one that needs to be discussed, and that is about what happened during the Boer War. And we're talking specifically about the rapes that took place during the Boer War. And this was by the British soldiers. And I've got Rudi waiting in the wings. I'll just cross to Rudi now. Hi, Rudi. How are you, buddy?
Hello, Scott. How are you doing?
Excellent, thank you. Excellent. I love your... That's a Mauser, isn't it?
Yes, that's the Mauser. Hey, stand still, you verdomde kakie. You know, these British, they all over, and I have my hands full tonight with them.
You're doing very well, buddy. You're doing a great job. Now, Rudi, you've been listening to my very brief intro then. As I mentioned there, we're going to be talking about some of the shenanigans that took place in these concentration camps. And just to kick this off, let's just talk about this fact that many Boer women and their daughters were raped by British soldiers while the Boer were on commando. Do you want to just address that point, just as an overview?
Scott, thank you, and good evening. Or, well, it's now nighttime here in South Africa in Rudeport. Good evening to all of you. If I can just give a little bit of background, there were 143 British concentration camps in South Africa. And they started off in 1900 with the Second Anglo-Boer War. Now, during that time, the Boers decided to fight for their freedom. And on many occasions, that was the last greet they gave their wives and children from the farm, and they were then off on commando.
Right.
So in 1900, there were already 450,000 British soldiers in Cape Town,
Wow.
coming to fight Boer force around about 60,000. So their evil deeds has now come to a stage where after 123 years, this, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak about this, this is the first international broadcast of the evil deeds these British soldiers did with Boer women and their children, daughters, that were left on the farms while the Boers were fighting them on commando.
Right. Now, there were several people who actually took records of these atrocities by the British, but they basically have been covered up by historians, haven't they?
Yes. What happened in 1901, there was a General Herzog. Now, he had an office, and he had somebody by the name called Klasie Havenga working for him. So as the war progressed, stories came out, to some of these generals that Boer women and their daughters are raped on the farms. So they then sent out, I don't know how they did it, obvious by horse, to and to ask Boer women to come forward and to come and give their affidavits of what happened, to them. And the sad thing is, I can imagine, and I made a 3-part documentary which is available on DVD. But if you don't have a DVD player anymore, you can also send me your email. Obviously, there is a cost to it, where I will then, send it via WeTransfer directly, to your email address, which you just download. So you can imagine, what happened to a Boer woman and their daughters, on a farm. There is no, somebody to protect them. And here comes a squadron of British soldiers, and you know what men are like during war. They do as they like. So many of these women were then raped. So Klasie Havenga then sent out a notification and asked Boer women that were raped by British soldiers to come forward. Now, I have tried, and in the near future, I'm going to have an interview with a lady that are going to, tell her experience, what happened, to her. So you can imagine, for a farm Boer woman to come forward to a very strange person to tell her ordeal, what happened to her, and then it's been written down by him. And in her mind, that she thought that because she is now giving her affidavit, that the culprits that raped her or her daughters will then be court-martialed. So as the war progressed and so many Boer women came forward, a lot of them did not come forward because of the embarrassment of what happened to them. It was also, it was written down neatly. Then General Herzog gave instructions to Klasie Havenga not to put this in the open. His words were, because it will be, petrol on the fire between the Boers and the British.
Right.
So that file of those affidavits were then put into archives. There was a moratorium on that file that nobody is allowed to read it.
Wow.
And a couple of years ago, the moratorium, after Klasie Havenga died, it was then made available so that the public can go and see. Recently, there was a very well-known South African TV producer. They also got hold of the file, and it is terrible. Obvious, it's now in this book that you get with a 3-part documentary for free, so that you can see. But I'm doing it very respectfully, because I am sure, and I please ask if there are descendants of these women that gave these affidavits, please contact me regarding this. So it's now in the open for 123 years. I did this 3-part documentary to tell the truth of what these British, soldiers did with these women and their daughters, on the farm.
Now, look, there's something, Rudi, that I think we need to also cover, and this is very topical, because right now there's a huge amount of backlash against Israel for what it's doing to the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. And something like, I think it's over 25,000 citizens, including half of which are women and children, have actually died in the conflict that took place from the 7th of October. Now, that's about 15,000 women and children, and there's been a big hoo-ha about that. South Africa's gone to the International Court of Justice, and the ICJ have basically confirmed that there is a genocide taking place, and sent out a very, very blunt warning to Netanyahu and Israel. Now, if we look at the Boer War and these concentration camps, apart from the rapes that took place, I believe there was something like 35,000 women and children who died in these concentration camps, many from starvation, many from disease. I know this isn't specifically about the rapes, but to bring things in perspective, if you look at Ellis Park, that has a capacity of 62,000 people. So just imagine Ellis Park half full, and that's how many, or more than half full, that's how many Boer women and children died in these concentration camps. Do you want to just address that point before we move on regarding the rape side?
Scott, yeah, you're just breaking up. I just heard half of your sentence.
Right.
But if I can just go back, you see, I could never understand the difference between a Boer and an Afrikaner, and we don't want to go into this. But it is so sad that there's no museum, not even the Women's Memorial Museum in Bloemfontein, that there are any mention of how many Boer women and children were raped by the British. You
Right.
see, we were fed with a lot of lies. Even when the Women's Memorial in Bloemfontein was opened in 1930, we were told there was only 26,000 women and children that died in these concentration camps,
Only.
which is a lie.
Yeah. Go
Only.
ahead.
Whereby I've met through my investigations and filming these concentration camps, a lady by the name of Celeste Reynolds. She, for her degree, she studied and she did, a very intense, what do they call it?
Research.
Research, yes, sorry, research. And she got to an amount of 34,000 Boer women and children.
Wow.
So my question is, why were we being lied to? What did those staff working at the Women's Memorial in Bloemfontein did with all their degrees whatsoever? Why didn't they do a thorough, investigation of how many women and children really died? And what's fascinating, when I did an interview with Celeste Reynolds, she said in her third year, when she went back to the archives, a lot of those files were missing. I say there were over 38,000 Boer women and children that died in these British murder camps.
Wow.
And why I say this is, when I did the documentary of Mafeking, which was the very first concentration camp erected in South Africa, if you walk in that cemetery, you see there's only a few tombstones left, but they replaced it with some marble, heads
Yeah.
and they did some exhumations. What are they? The right word? Where they see how many women and children, are actually
Yeah.
buried in one.
Yeah. Yeah. For
They
mass
they
graves.
they were yes. And when they opened some of those graves, they found 4 to 5 children in one
Wow.
grave.
Wow.
So the amount of women and children we will never ever knew. But it is so sad that why, the way we were lied to, that there was only 26,000 women and children, who died, in these British camps.
Yeah. Now, just really, while I'm just um, thinking about it, I'm going to put on the screen those photos that you sent me, just to share with
Yes,
everybody. And the first photo is this book that you just briefly showed us, Die Verschrikking wat verzweig wordt. Do you want to just tell us
yes,
what that particular book's about? And is this the one that you're going to be supplying to us in PDF form?
yes.
Right.
Now, the heading actually says the the awful deeds that the British soldiers did against the Boer women were hidden away from us. And a lot of, these people say, no, it never happened. But here's all the affidavits in this book. Now, if I can just start, why I was so interested in doing these documentaries. About 10 years ago, we stopped at Springfontein while I was doing the series about the concentration camps. And, I only know what Professor Raad wrote in one of his books about the concentration camps and the 3,000 women and children that were there, etc. So myself and my wife were sleeping over at a guest house. And in this guest house, on the table was this book, 963 Days at the Junction, written by Blackie de Swart. Now, he's a farmer that stays not far from where the actual concentration camp was. So I asked the owner of the guest house, listen, where did you get this book? He said, no, it's a farmer that stays close by. I said, yes, I'm here to do a documentary about Springfontein. Is there any chance I can meet him? So arrangements were made, and I met him the next day at the big concentration camp cemetery. Now, Blackie, for the 3 years that the concentration camp was in Springfontein, he did a day-to-day research of what the people did there at Springfontein, the women and children, etc. And he showed us, around. He showed us the main cemetery, etc., and where the place was where the women got, water from. Where the Royal Engineers made a borehole, etc., and where the concentration camp was, etc. And then he asked me, do I know about the baby graves? And I said, no. And he then went up and he showed us in Springfontein the graveside of 37 babies. Now, it just didn't make sense to me. Why are these babies buried separately about 2 kilometers from the main
Right.
concentration cemetery? So in this book, he explained, and I just want to show you a photo. So when you get to Springfontein and you go to this cemetery, in his own words, he wrote here that the story that are given about, these babies just doesn't make sense to him. Now, I was on a different level at that stage doing, the one concentration camp against the other. And after we left and I did the interview, I never thought of this again.
Sorry,
So,
I just want to say, Rudi, that I'm showing the photo of those graves,
yes,
the stones for those 37 babies.
yes.
Yeah, carry on.
I want to tell you what is very fascinating about this particular graveyard is all those graves are buried in a 45-degree angle. So we as Christians, when we are buried from east to west.
Right.
The traitors and the murderers were buried from north to south.
Yes. And there's a
So
classic example of that at sorry, Rudi. There's a classic example of that at Pilgrim's Rest, at the grave there,
yes,
where the robber's grave
yes,
points the
the
different
rock
way.
grave,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. Go,
that's true.
go ahead.
So let me just get my mind now in order. So I was then, when we were cleaning the Winburg concentration camp cemetery, during that 7 years, I tried to contact Professor Andries Raad, but I could never get hold of him. He had an answering machine, and I wanted to ask him certain questions about the concentration camps,
Right.
etc. So after we cleaned that cemetery, my phone rang, and guess who phoned me? Professor Andries Raad. So he then said, listen, can you please come see me? We need to make a documentary about Siener van Rensburg. Well, I was very honored. So we made arrangements, and then we went to his farm, and then I made that 9-part documentary about, Siener van Rensburg. But while we were there, when we had lunch, etc., afterwards, we had a bit of a chat. He made a series of 5 of these books when he was doing work for the Women's Memorial in Bloemfontein. 5 of these.
Right.
So he then said to me, did I know about Klaas Havenga? Did I know him? I said, no, I've never heard of him. He said, well, he was the person that took down the affidavit from the Boer women and their daughters that were raped by the British.
Right.
So I said, do you have an extra book for me? And he said, unfortunately, it was out of print, but he made me a copy. And my friend Jaco Diedrichs was with me. So Professor Raad gave me this, a copy exactly of the same book. And he said, Rudi, now you have done, everything about the concentration camps. Don't you want to do something about the rapes that occurred, by the British soldiers on Boer women and children? I said, right. All right. And I just took it, and it was in my studio for a very long time. And just after that documentary I made about Siener van Rensburg for Professor Andries Raad, I was now planning to go to St. Helena to do a documentary about the prisoners of war, the 6,000 that was on St. Helena,
right.
3,000 kilometers from Cape Town. So one morning, my phone rang, and it was a lady called Elria Wessels. Now, Elria Wessels worked at the Women's Memorial in Bloemfontein for 30 years. She had a master's degree in history. So I was very curious about these black concentration camps, etc. And I had my camera with me, and I had a chat with her regarding the black concentration camps, etc. And all of a sudden, this book of Black Eater Swart came to my mind. And I asked her, Elria, please tell me, what is the story of that 37 babies buried 2 kilometers away from the main cemetery in Springfontein? And she said, on camera, and you can see her interview in this 3-part documentary I made, that babies are the fruit of the rapes that the British soldiers did against those Boer women and their daughters on the farms. So after the interview, I got everything ready to go to St. Helena, and I never ever gave any notice regarding that interview, etc. One day I was just busy in my studio, and again I found this book from Professor Raad. I made this cover, and I got the title out of a very liberal magazine called The Cut. And there's a whole story written about the rapes of the women and children, in these concentration camps. So then I started to put my mind in a sense of how am I going to do this documentary? How will I now go and explain in front of a camera, of a woman that's been raped? So I did some, research, etc. And then I thought, but listen, let me just take that interview I did with Elria Wessels, just have a look at it, and maybe it will give me more ideas. So I took the DVD and I watched it, and I then said, all right, to explain, in a sense of great respect for these women that, what happened to them. There's a lot of rural farms in South Africa. Now, there's a saying in South Africa, die mure sal die storie vertel, of as hierdie mure kon praat. In other words, it's just the four walls, very dilapidated. But if those walls can talk, it will tell you a story of hardship, of days where your people that stayed there were happy, they had sorrow, they had joy, etc. So reading these affidavits now written by the women, I then got this idea of a little girl that's been born. How your mother looked after the baby and fed the baby, etc. And now she's starting to crawl and she's starting to walk, and now she's growing up and doing her own thing, and then she started to go to school, etc. And then she became this princess until the day, and I'm sure out of all the misery that can ever happen to a woman is the day when she are raped. Her whole life, no matter, and I tried with two ladies to do an interview just to give people their view of, after so many years, will you ever come over it? Will it ever reside that you will carry on with your life, never ever thinking of this again? And I, as a man, think it's impossible. Looking off, this rural farm with the walls, etc. If you want to build a house, you have to put the foundation first. Then you build the walls, then the doors and the windows and the roof, etc. And now the house is complete. Until one day you have an electrical mishap and the whole house burned down. The terrible feeling that your whole house has been burned down. And that happened also in the Second Anglo-Boer War. Over 30,000 Boer women, Boer farms were burned down by the British. So I met another good friend of mine, Ernest Kotze, and he saw some of my YouTube videos, etc. And then he contacted me and he said, but he's very interested in, what I do about the history. So he then sponsored a trip. So the trip was that one photo where I am now standing in front of the Women's Memorial in Bloemfontein.
Let me just get that on the screen.
But also,
there we go. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm now starting to investigate why. What was the reason that this Glasie Havenga file was hidden away for so many years? What was the reason that this wasn't made public? Not in one museum in South Africa. There's one word of Boer women and their daughters that were raped by the British. Why? I'm going to give you that answer a little bit later. So I then started to do my investigation. This is another book Professor Andries Raad wrote about the concentration camps, etc. So if you go to Springfontein, coming back to that photos of all those graves of the children, he then said in his book that now, according to, he kept his words very professionally for not directly accusing this missionary Sandrock from Springfontein. According to whoever, is that now this missionary arrived in Springfontein just before the Second Anglo-Boer War. Now you can imagine, he's now from Germany. Now all of a sudden here's a war. He's got his family to look after. He's got all these people, the women and children, are just all over 3,000 of them. Emily Hoppia's arrived there. She stayed a couple of times at his place looking after the half-naked woman walking around, etc. So he's been accused of, if he goes to the concentration camp the following day and a Boer woman or girl gave birth to a baby and that baby died before he reached that baby are going to hell. That baby are not supposed to be buried with the others in the main concentration camp cemetery. Now, how ridiculous can you be if there's a war like what happened in the Second Anglo-Boer War? What women that are now captured on the farm will think of, listen, I've got to get their birth certificates, etc. She's thinking of if she's got 4 children, food, medicine, clothes, etc. They're all like organ pipes, small little babies. Some of them needs to be carried. What woman is going to think of taking a birth certificate of a child with her to a concentration camp? I've never heard of a foolish reason like that. So, with my investigation, I thought, but listen, I need to know the truth after I had that interview with Rudie Rousseau, more from the Women's Memorial in Bloemfontein. So in the meantime, I also phoned Professor Raad and I said, Professor, you must tell me, what's the real story of what happened at Springfontein regarding those graves? Because you wrote in your book, according to whoever is that this missionary did to those women. Now, you can imagine a woman giving birth to a baby, and the baby, for some, no food, sickness, illnesses, etc., dies. And here comes a pastor, and he now tells you, listen, the baby is not supposed to be with you now anymore. He's going to be buried separate because he's going to hell. Can you imagine, what that girl must go through if something like this happened?
Yeah, just on that point, I've once again put up that photo of the graves, which are 2 kilometers away from the other graves. These are the graves of the babies that died, and they were the offspring of rape by the British soldiers back then. Yeah, back to you.
Yes. According to my interview with Rudie Rousseau, you see, Rudie Rousseau, she hit a nail on the head because of the lies of this Boer Women Memorial in Bloemfontein. And because of the lies of this professor saying that according to whoever, I want to know from him. And I've asked him nicely, I have had great respect for him. But with my thorough investigation with the help of Ernest Kotze, something is wrong. We have been lied regarding the rapes of these women and children. So myself and Ernest arrived at the Women's Memorial in Bloemfontein. Now there are 3 people, and I named them. There's Johan van Zyl, there's Vicky Jennis, and there's a Miss, I'm not sure if she's a Mrs. or Miss Swanepoel. When I walked into the foyer, there was a lady at the reception, and I greeted and I said, why are your museum lied to us? Why? What's the reason? And obviously I spoke loud to gain the attention because there were some other public people also, and now all of a sudden you can see they want to know now what's going on. Meneer, just wait a bit, mister, I'm going to phone somebody. And here comes Johan van Zyl. And I said to him, Johan, he's now Dr. Johan van Zyl. I said to him, why are this museum keep on lying about the Boer women, of the Boer history of what happened, in these concentration camps? Oh, why? And so on. So immediately, trying to get us away from the public, he invited us now to a conference room, and he made us coffee. Can you believe it? And I must also laugh a bit because if you can see his face when I was so loud and said, "But listen, why are you keep on lying about the truth about the Boer women and children?" So he invited the other two ladies, and I said, "But listen, I did an interview with Elria Wessel. What is the truth about those 37 babies at Springfontein?" He said to me, "Why?" I said, according to Elria Wessels, they were the offspring of the rapes that occurred on Boer women and children on the farms by the British soldiers. Oh, no, you can't believe Elria Wessels. I said, "Excuse me?" I said, "She worked 30 years here at the Boer Women Memorial in Bloemfontein. She's got a master's degree." And they were like, birds singing the same song. Yeah. Oh, no, you can't believe what Elria Wessels said. Now, the same thing is my voice recording with Professor Andries Raad. When I phoned him, and it's now over a year, I phoned him and I said, "Professor, please tell me the truth. What is the story of those babies being buried separately? Because according to Blackie de Swart, you are not telling the truth. There's something fishy about this." So after our meeting, he also then said, "Oh no, but you can't believe Elria Wessels." I said, "But Prof, she worked there 30 years. Surely, she did good." There was a TV series called Arende. She did most of the hard work, compiling this because they wanted to. It was such a wonderful TV series of prisoners of war camp, simulating the prisoners of war camp in St. Helena. No, but you can't believe Elria Wessels. She's got dementia. All of a sudden, now, in all my honesty, and I've been working this work, I'm doing this work for the past 20 years. If you look at this documentary and my interview with Elria Wessels, I am not a doctor. I also said to Professor Raad, "But are you a doctor to confirm they had dementia? Or is it because she told the truth of the lies that we have been told all our years regarding the rapes that occurred on these Boer women and their daughters?" So we had our meeting there, and after the coffee, when we walked out, Johan van Zyl gave me a book and Ernest also a book. So now we were on our way to Fourie Smith to go and look for the grave of Klasie Havenga. You can see this all in the 3-part documentary. So we were, sleeping over at the house not far from Springfontein. And while I was busy, Ernest called me and he said to me, "Listen, I just want to show you my book." So we have just been told that you can't believe Elria Wessels. And you see, this book was given to Elria Wessels for all the good work she did at the Women's Memorial in Bloemfontein. So how all of a sudden there's a big change of mind, accusing her that she's not talking the truth? I'm sure that after a master's degree, if the university decide, then you will be promoted to a professor. She was such a wonderful person. I met her twice. Once in Wolmaranstad, where she gave me that interview, and at Ottosdal doing a tour for Sina van Rensburg. So in this book, just after the front page, it says, "Elria Wessels, we thank you so much for all your hard work you did here at the Women's Memorial." So if she did not tell the truth, why didn't they never fire her? And coming back to my question earlier, the only reason why we have been lied to all these years and why that Klasie Havenga file was hidden away, I am sure, I don't have the written proof, but the British pay them to lie.
Right.
To lie about the evil deeds they did with those women and children. So, my friend Ernest Kotze, and we are a group of veterans, and there's Jaco, there's Lucas, there's Marius, I forgot their names, excuse me, but they are very helpful regarding some of these things that we do. So Ernest, clever as he is, a great Boer, then started to do investigation also. So on the internet, he found this document written by Professor Dolf Brits, who did a thorough thesis of this missionary Christopher Sandrock. Remember now, in this book by Professor Raad, that according to whoever, that this Sandrock is accused of sending those 37 babies to hell. Not those are the graves of the Boer women and children that were raped. So even in this document, there's nothing evil regarding Sandrock. Nothing. That question was also asked to Johan van Zyl, Dr. Johan van Zyl. If you get this 3-part documentary, you will see the email that Ernest sent him and asked him, what do you know about Christopher Sandrock? And Johan van Zyl said he also did for his degree, who was Christopher Sandrock? And there was nothing evil that he could find regarding this God-fearing man. So it's actually such a shame, and as a Christian, that a man of God being accused that he sent 37 babies to hell, whereby we have been lied about the rapes of these Boer women and their daughters on the farms. So Ernest did a good job. We then decided he was from the Lutheran Church in Germany. So Ernest wrote a letter to the Lutheran Church in Germany, to the archives department, and we asked them, do they have anything regarding Sandrock? And guess what? Wonderful man sent us his whole diary from Germany. But I don't know if you can see this. I'll try to put it up closely.
What I've got is a copy
This
of...
is his handwriting.
Yeah, I've got a copy of the page. I'll just put that on the screen. This is from those photos you sent me?
Yes.
Okay, I've got that on the screen right now. Do you want to talk about that? That's dated 29th of August, 1875.
Yes. Okay, I'll tell you now about this document.
Yes,
so,
please do.
This is more or less the handwriting of Sandrock. Yes, but he had two diaries. This is the front page of the document that was sent to us from Germany. This is the front page of his diary. And obvious, it's like those High Dutch form of writing. You can't, if you're not in that level of reading, it is impossible to read his handwriting, because it was a very high German type of handwriting.
Right.
So this friend of ours in Germany then asked, why do we want, to know about the diary, etc. And we told him the story of that this missionary Sandrock was accused of sending 37 babies, to hell. But it was, those babies were of the Boer women and their daughters that were raped by the British soldiers. So when we came back with all the raw footage, and I started, to edit this 3-part documentary, I don't know how it happened, but I found a little note that there's something about this Christopher Sandrock at the University of UNISA. Can you believe this?
Wow.
Where that note came from, I don't have a clue. So I asked Ernest, please, there's the email address, there's the details of this department in the archives. Can you please ask them, can they see if they can get this file? So he got a writing back. I'm getting back to that handwriting that you asked me now to explain.
Yeah.
So this woman, this lady, contacted Ernest, and she said, yes, we've got this file of Sandrock. You're most welcome to come and visit us at the university. There's the file. So off we went to Pretoria, and we then find 3 books. This is one of the front covers of those books.
Yeah, I've got that photo. I'll just put that on the screen. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. All right. So there were 3 books that looks like this. His granddaughter. I thank God for, for this, because the truth will set you free. She then, obvious, know that type of German language, and then she translated it from her grandfather, to writing like this, and this is all written in German.
Right.
Ernest, my friend, is now busy translating this German into Afrikaans about Sandrock, because we want to know if it is the truth that he sent those babies to hell, according to the book of Professor Andries Raad, and according to the 3 staff members of the Vroue Monument in Bloemfontein, the Women's Memorial. After she translated those 3 books, she donated it to UNISA. Nowhere, till now, with the investigation of Ernest translating it from German to Afrikaans, there's no word whatsoever regarding this 37 babies that he did such an evil deed. So, the 2 ladies that did the reading of the brutal rapes, according to these affidavits, the one stays in Cape Town. So I then contacted her and I said, will you please read some of these affidavits for me? I'm doing this documentary, and she agreed to it. And then we worked out how much money it will cost for me, because of the high fuel prices to get to Cape Town. And we got to an amount of roughly about 10,000 rand. Honestly, I didn't have that money. So one morning I was standing here in my studio, and the phone rang, and I saw, but it's a very long number. And I asked it, and it's an Afrikaans-speaking man, and he's phoning from Dubai. And he said to me, yes, he looked at some of my documentaries on YouTube, and he wants to give a financial contribution for the work I did. And I said, but I'm just now busy with this rapes of the Boer women and children by the British. So he said, but, do we have an account? I said, yes, I don't have a Swift account. My wife does. And I gave it to him, WhatsApp it, to him. And about an hour after that, my wife said, listen, there's only 10 rand in this, that he had, transferred into her account. I then sent him a WhatsApp and I said, listen, I just want to say thank you so much for the 10 rand you gave me. If it's 10 rand or 1,000 rand, I do this because I know I have to get the truth to the Boerevolk regarding our history. And the lies that we have been told all our years. So The next day, guess what? I get a ping on my phone and he transferred 10,000 rand.
Wow.
He asked me not to mention his name. 10,000.
Wow.
The exact amount I need now to go to Cape Town. Now, from Rudiepoort to Cape Town is about 1,500 kilometers. So it's diesel, it's toll gates, it's sleepover, etc. And we stayed with these people in Cape Town. And I said to this lady, listen, if you can read some of these affidavits for me, I will then give you a copy. I made an extra copy for her of all these, affidavits of the women that were raped by the British,
Right.
just to say thank you. So I did that. But also, I asked her because she is one of a couple of ladies on certain groups now in South Africa reading stories out of books regarding the history, etc. I then asked her very respectfully, please don't read these affidavits out of respect for these women on the normal social mediums. And she agreed to it. So after we did that interview and she read, some of these affidavits, we came back, and in Kimberley, I had only 500 rand left of that 10,000, and I put diesel in at Kimberley. So we went back to Bloemfontein to see if we can find the grave of this Christopher Sandrock. Again, my friend Ernest Kotze went onto Google Maps, etc. And to the people in Bloemfontein, what a shame, what an utterly shame to see two of those huge cemeteries overgrown. It's terrible. When we got to the cemetery, it was so overgrown, and we walked for a couple of minutes, and then we got to the grave of this Christopher Sandrock. So, according to Professor Andries Raad and the three personnel at the Women's Memorial in Bloemfontein, you cannot believe a word that Elria Wessel say. Although she's got a master's degree, she's a liar. You're not allowed to believe what she says, because according to Professor Raad, she had dementia, and I asked him, Prof, are you a medical doctor to confirm that, etc.? We are not friends anymore. He actually blocked me for asking so many questions, and it's now over a year. While we were still, on a talking perspective, I asked him a question, and then he responded to it. And he said to me, well, he's got letters written by Boer women of how they were raped and what this Sandrock did by taking that baby and buried him separately in Springfontein, because that baby is now going to hell because he's not baptized. So, if Sandrock was such an evil person, on his grave, just want to show you quickly. Sorry, I just want to get
I've
the
actually
paper here.
shown the photo of Clara Sandrock and Christopher Sandrock. Christoph Sandrock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the top part of that tombstone, it says, Christus is my lewe. Now, why do you accuse a man of God for such evil deeds? By taking the thoughts of, why is the British getting away with this in Bloemfontein? Why was this file kept away for so many years, 123 years? And we're making history tonight. This is the first international broadcast of the evil deeds the British did here in South Africa. Doing that to innocent women and children on the farms where they could not defend themselves. So getting a stick and trying to get the bushes away, guess what we found? If he was such an evil person, why will the congregation in Springfontein say from a very I just want to get the English words van 'n baie dankbare gemeente van Springfontein. From a very
Thankful. Thankful?
thankful congregation.
Yeah. Now,
Why would they thank him?
I just for the record, I've just put that photo. You can't really read what it says. I can see gemeente there.
Van 'n baie
Springfontein.
gemeente van Springfontein. Very thankful, congregation from Springfontein.
Now
so if you was a Professor Raad,
that was at the foot of the grave that I've just shown. Is that correct?
Yes, but it was so overgrown, and just by accident, when we tried to hid the bushes away, we found that.
Right. Okay.
So, Ernest again showed. We took some photos and he sent it back to Germany, and out of generosity, this man, the head of the archives in Germany, sent me a donation because I said, he was accused of doing such evil deeds which he never did in his life, according to the book of Professor Raad. We just want to go and clean up his grave and make him feel, after so many years, that the truth will set you free.
Right.
So myself and Lucas and another friend of ours, we went down to Bloemfontein. It was very hot. It was overgrown. We cleaned up his grave, to give him the honor that he deserves. So my only conclusion is why we have been lied to regarding that Klasie Havenga file that's been hidden away for so many years, 123 years, is that the British are paying them not to tell the truth of what happened. In these concentration camps, I'm not sure what is the English word in Afrikaans. The people that can understand Afrikaans is called vroedvroue. In other words, it's women that can help a girl of a woman that are going to give birth. Not
yes,
sure what
yes,
is the,
yes. I know what you mean. Yeah, but yeah. No, that's fine. That's understandable. Yeah.
Now, can you imagine? Now, maybe, they are newlyweds. So the Boer is now on commando. Now she gets raped by a British soldier. And what is she going to tell her husband?
Yeah.
When he gets back, there's a little babino here on the farm. And he knows that he had never intercourse with his wife. They were only newly met, and now the war broke out.
Yeah.
So, in this very liberated book, The Cut, those women that looked after women that gave birth said on many occasions, when that girl or woman gave birth, they then put a cloth.
Thanks, Nat has just given me the right name. They're called midwives.
Midwives, that's right. Thank you so much. Yes, they then, after the baby is born, they then take a cloth and put it over the baby's face to cover it so that the baby can die.
Oh, no.
What? This is a question, and I'm asking this for a woman. If you were raped against your will by whatever nation, are you willing to look after that child, carry that child for 9 months? Will you ever see it in a different light that, like one woman, put it to me, that's murder. How can that midwife do that to that child? What will you do? Obvious, if I was a woman and I got raped against my will, I will surely make sure that that child dies if it is in my hands to do this.
Right.
And this is what happened to that 37 graves in Bloemfontein. Now, this professor said he got letters written by women, it's now over a year, never sent me any evidence that they say that this Sandrock took the child, telling them he's going to hell or she's going to hell, and that is why they were buried separately. I wonder where did they, in this cemetery, you will also see the names of these so-called babies that were buried there, all Afrikaans names. If you look at the dates, and also according to him, that this Sandrock was only there at Springfontein for 3 months, which is a lie. Because if you look at the date where one of the babies died, it was in January and the next one died in August. I mean, how is it possible that he was only at Springfontein for 3 months? He was at Springfontein from 1898 till 1913. So that's not 3 months. So it is so sad that we have been misled all these years. And I thank God that we got through thorough investigation the truth about Sandrock. And those, I am sure, is not the only graves that Boer women were raped by British in South Africa. I have visited 55 concentration camps, and there's a lot of, graves of children in those camps. If you look at the names and the dates when they died, and you go to the main cemetery in Springfontein, you will find the similar way of the date when they died and the year, etc. The same age more or less. Where did they get those names from?
Yeah.
If they want to take this matter further, I would really appreciate it. I want them, to give me the proof. They say the proof is in the pudding. They must give me the proof. But sadly, I have asked the other lady that also read these affidavits. I'm giving you this book. Please do not read it on a social media. Out of respect for those women that were raped. And my heart is very sore. There was friction between these two ladies to see who is the best reader, like a competition. Out of the heart sore, these women had to go through during the Second Anglo-Boer War. They took these affidavits that was given, this book was given to me by Professor Andries Raad in his house. And they went to social media to gain brownie points. I don't know what fortune do they make out of this. It breaks my heart. When you get this 3-part documentary, I make a copy for you of these affidavits. There's no copyright because it's 123 years ago. Free of charge, so that you can read it in private or in your house. I am very sad that this happened.
Now,
none of these two women did not know about Klasie Havenga.
Yeah. Now,
I am sure, and I don't want any points for this. A lot of people did not know about Klasie Havenga.
Yeah.
And after this broadcast, they will know that he was the person that took these affidavits down. And I say, General Herzog, I was in his house in Cape Town, and Klasie Havenga are two Boer traitors. Because those women thought that giving their statements, that these men that did these evil deeds, to them, will be court-martialed, only to know that it's going to be a closed file and it's going to be put away, and it's now in the open for after 123 years. So many of those women, maybe they were lucky not to get pregnant. But can you imagine? Now her husband is coming back from war.
Yeah.
And he wants now to make love to his beautiful wife. And now he cannot understand, but she just don't want me to have what is the right in a marriage.
Yeah.
That she died.
Yeah, her soul died.
With that sorrow.
Yeah.
That was, hidden away.
It's awful.
By this General Herzog and Klasie Havenga.
I just want to speak to what you've been saying, Rudi, because look, your knowledge and expertise on this subject is without equal anywhere in the world. So no one can refute what you've been saying today. Now, that book of affidavits, you're going to send me an e-copy or a PDF of that. And I'm
Yes.
going to ask Nat, who's here in the side chat, to put that into our PDF library so that anyone watching, hopefully I'll get that overnight, but as soon as I've got it, I will put it up, and I'll put a link below this video on lovinglivetv.com. So please register there, and then look below the video, and there will be a link directly to the PDF library to this document with the 37 affidavits in them. And this is the one by Klasie Havenga, who took the affidavits back in 1901. And this is Yeah, please go ahead.
There's more than 37 affidavits in this book.
Right, okay. But these are from women who were in the concentration camps.
No, on the farms. They were raped on the farms.
Oh, okay.
And then they were taken to the concentration camps.
Yeah.
Some of them were just, after they were raped, they were just left there.
Well, it doesn't surprise me, because if you look at the horrible things that happened to the women in these concentration camps, it's disgusting. So it's a no-brainer that they would have done this to the women. I'm talking about the British. Now, I've got a couple of questions here for you that I just want to put to you. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Can I just tell you something?
Please go ahead.
What is so sad for me? Professor Andries Raad, he was the very first person that took the original Dutch affidavits and translated into Afrikaans. He was on the board for 4 years in Bloemfontein. Why did he keep quiet or kept quiet? For not opening this in that museum in Bloemfontein.
Yeah.
I've asked him this question before and never answered. You had the authority. You are a man of law. You gave law at the university. Why didn't you do that, sir?
Yeah.
I have lost all my respect for you, Professor Andries Raad. If you take this matter further, for what the British did to these women, and what you and the 3 staff for accusing Elria Wessels that she was lying by only telling me the truth, and this is on record, it's on a DVD, accusing her of dementia, for me is just unacceptable. For what these other 2 Afrikaans ladies did, after I have asked them, they have now got written permission from Andries Raad to open it socially. Sir, you were in the position to open it, to the public because you are so well known. You gave a lot of lectures. And now this, for me, it's such an insult what you did to those Boer women that were raped. I never ever wanted to keep it away from any person. I wanted to give them the book so that they can read it in their own private capacity. My question is, sir, if your wife or your daughter were raped, and now all of a sudden, you now have to hear on social media that what happened to your daughter or your wife are now exposed on social media, sort of like as a joke, how will you feel?
Mm.
What you done, is just as great as a traitor that was in the Anglo-Boer War.
Yeah. Now, look, I've got...
You want to ask me some questions?
Yes, I've got a couple of questions here for you, or clarification, I guess one could say. Ben Potgieter has said the concentration camp in Pinetown is where this all started. Now, you mentioned, I think, Springfontein as the original concentration camp. Where was the original concentration camp?
The very first concentration camp was in Mafeking.
Mafeking, okay.
Mafeking, yes, yeah. And if I can just...
That's where Baden-Powell was.
Yes. An evil deed was also done by a very, very well-known Afrikaans organization called the Erfenis Stichting. A couple of years ago, I was just watching the news at night, and all of a sudden, here comes this lady and said, listen, they have now found a black concentration camp. And I said, but I've been, to a couple concentration camps. There's a book written about black concentration camps. And even if you ask the Boer Women Memorial in Bloemfontein, go show us, they can't. So the main concentration camp in Mafeking, there was a big, what you call it, like a fight in between for those that did not wanted to go fight against the British and those whose husbands went to fight against the British. So those that did not wanted to go and fight were told by the inmates, if you die, you will not be buried with us. You will be buried away from us. So there was another cemetery in Mafeking called Magogwe. So here, all of a sudden, on the news, here's the Erfenis Stichting, the Heritage Foundation. They have now found, a black concentration camp. So a friend of mine flew from Durban. We went down to Mafeking and we started to look for this so-called black concentration camp. And when we got eventually to this camp, we saw an Afrikaans statue with Afrikaans reading on it, a beautiful Afrikaans poem. And in this graveyard, there were 240 graves. And the first 4 graves, the tombstones were written in Dutch. Moelman was the surname. I've never, and I do it respectfully, have found any other nation, a black person whose surname is Moelman. So we went to the tribal office. We made a meeting with the chief of the Baralong people there.
Right.
And he was so upset because he told them, what are you doing? What lies are you told? And the money that the Voortrekker Monument in Pretoria got from the government was taken away because they lied on their permit. They wanted to lie. I made a documentary about this. These Afrikaner organizations that you cannot trust.
Yeah. You know,
So
I
it took, sir, sorry, those bones that were taken out in cooperation with the University of Pretoria was then put into black crates. So nobody wanted to stand who's now the accused and who's going to rebury these bones.
mm,
These bones were kept in a funeral parlor for 5 years. Irrespective, it must have been a hell of a decision in the Anglo-Boer War. If I'm going to fight the British, I might lose my farm and my family. If I'm not going to fight the British, I can keep my farm and my family. Irrespective of these 240 graves were buried separately. Those were Boer women and children that cried when the person died.
mm,
And they felt nothing. They wanted to just get more money from the government.
yeah. Can I
Sorry,
just?
sir.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I went to Mafeking in 2006 and in 2011. And when I went there in 2006, the graveyard, which is from the Boer War, which is behind this big shopping centre, you know the one I'm talking about. You
Yes,
climb
yes.
over this little low brick wall and you're in the graveyard, and you can see all the British graves, which are just like a metal cross, you know.
Yes.
And there's a huge gravestone of some guy who had a VC who died in the UK. I've forgotten what his name is now. It's a long name, but you know, it's a huge monument to him, and a British soldier who wanted to be buried at Mafeking and was. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because in 2006, even then, the condition of that graveyard was very good. I mean, you could see that the graves were being looked after. But when I went back there in 2011, not so much. In fact, because of the shopping centre, this being behind the shopping centre, a whole lot of plastic bags, and the graveyard was literally full of plastic bags and rubbish, and it had been let go over those 5 years. And also over those 5 years, the what's called the Siege Museum at Mafeking. I don't know if you've been there recently, but in
No.
2011 or 2006, it was actually the Siege Museum. But by 2011, they had replaced all the stuff to do with the Siege of Mafeking, put it into a room at the back where the light didn't work, so you couldn't see anything. That you had to literally take a torch in there to see.
Leaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the actual main area of that museum today is just about the Baralong people. I met the Baralong chief back in 2006, and actually had a coffee with the guy, and we talked about the history of his people. Very, very interesting. But it's a tragedy about the condition that not just the Boer graves are in, but how the British now don't seem to be worried anymore about those graves. And another place where the graves used to be, and I'm not sure if they still are, but they used to be beautifully maintained, was near Ladysmith on Wagon Hill. Those areas where you had monuments
Yeah.
and stuff like
Beautiful.
that, they were beautifully maintained. Now, look, I've got a question here from Nikki Harvey, who, Nikki, by the way, is a lovely lady, and she lives in Gauteng, and she says, could you please ask Rudi about the women's monument in the Franschhoek area?
Well, that's also a fascinating story. I did a tour a couple of months ago regarding Susan Nel, that was brutally raped by two British officers in Wimberg concentration camp on Old Year's Eve in 1901. I took people, I did 2 tours there to go show them where she was hidden away in a cave, etc. And when this lady miraculously, survived, she then, took her friend that are buried there in Wimberg, Rosie, I forgot the surname, but she ended up going by the train to Cape Town station. And when she got out of the train, she was very pale. And there was a lady standing there called Marie Koopmans de Wet. Now, I did a documentary at the museum, right in the middle of Cape Town. This lady, Marie Koopmans de Wet, stayed. And she saw this Susan Nel, and she said, "Gee whiz, you look so pale." And she comforted her and asked her, "But, where are you going? Do you have work, etc.?" And Susan said, "No, I don't have work." So she said, "Okay, now you're going to work for me." Now, I forgot this farm, but this Marie Koopmans de Wet, she also, went around during the Second Anglo-Boer War and got some clothes and food, etc., that was then sent from this farm in Franschhoek down to the concentration camps. There's a beautiful memorial and the big stones, etc. It's on a wine farm. I'll put it on my YouTube channel for people to go and watch. And, so she also did wonderful work, Marie Koopmans de Wet, for the women and children that were in a concentration camp, yes.
Right. Okay, fantastic. Look, Rudi, I want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight and putting the truth out there about the appalling atrocities of the British soldiers, and in particular in tonight's discussion about who knows how many Boer women were raped, brutally raped by these soldiers, and obviously the dilemma then is, if they did fall pregnant, as you say, well, what do? Because, their husbands are out fighting, and when they come back, they're going to say, well, who the heck is this kid? Where did he come from? So, they were put in a horrible situation, look, it is a very disturbing story, and very disturbing that it's been covered up all this time.
Well, if I can say, and if there are any good Samaritans out there, my first name is Rudolph, but so many people know me as Rudi, and my second name is Please Give a Donation. A wonderful friend of mine, I have written, the words, and I'm sure it's the first, this is the second tombstone in South Africa, no, the third one, where my name, my surname, my cell phone number, and my email address is on this plate. So he is busy doing this plate where the correct information will be put at this children's cemetery in Springfontein in a couple of months' time.
Yeah.
So when people arrive there is the truth of these babies that were the children of the women that were raped by the British. If the Women Memorial cannot give me, truthful paperwork, etc., for what I am saying tonight, with our investigation and Sandra being accused, etc., that they can take me to jail if they want to. I'm doing this for these women that was so hopeful that their ordeal will then be rectified, and those soldiers that did this evil deed will be court-martialed. It will be erected at Springfontein. Be assured of this. So thank you so much, and we will pray that God will bless your eyes and that you will have, vision, because you're doing such great work, doing so many different interviews with all walks of life. And thank you, and I am honored, sir, to speak the truth on behalf of all these women, or the terrible ordeals that they had to go through in these concentration camps in South Africa.
Right.
Because every year there's a big, I call it a party in Germany with all the concentration camps there. But my question till today is, why did the world turn a blind eye of what the British did here in South Africa? If those 38,000 Boer women and children did not die, it would have been a different situation in our country, today.
Yeah.
I even said to the Baralong chief, Nugosi, sir, your Baralong people were the first group of people that the British told you to go and fight with them against the Boers. They promised you farms. They promised you a lot of things. Did you ever get that? And he said to me, no, never. I said, sir, now it is time now for you to put a claim in against the British for what they did. We have a lot of educated advocates, very clever people. Can't we? And the sad thing is, when I was standing at Olival North, they have a huge tombstone. They similar to Springfontein. The original 10 years ago when I filmed that was still the original, tombstones, etc. And another Afrikaner organizations, the Rapportreiers came, they demolished it, they flattened that whole area, and they have erected marble tombstones. Even in Olival North, where the original concentration camp cemetery was, they exhumed all those graves, and the bones were, put at another place in town. If you go down to Queenstown, many of this, there's a high school just opposite this cemetery, this monument, where the children, climb through. There's a hole, and many of those bones were just thrown all around in the cemetery.
Wow.
My only reason why I think of why these Afrikaner organizations did this is they were paid by the British to get rid of the evidence. If you look at the original documentation I did, a documentary I did of Springfontein, and you go there today, what a shame.
And you know what? All I can say is thank God for Emily Hobhouse, because she really did blow the whistle on the whole thing, didn't she?
Yes. Yeah, we must give thanks to Emily Hobhouse and to Marie Koopmans de Wet. I never knew about Marie Koopmans de Wet, the wonderful work that she did. And even doing the tour of Susan Nel, I never ever thought of, that she will meet she will meet Marie Koopmans de Wet. And I had the privilege to go and film in that house, that museum in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And for my fellow men that have the passion that we as the Boer folk have, to find out the truth. Don't just believe what you read. Do a bit of investigation. And if there is a cemetery in your town, a concentration camp cemetery, get a couple of people, go clean it up. Those people offered their lives so that you can live, I won't say free today because of everything that's happening in South Africa, but, just to say thank you for leaving your family behind. I, could not stop crying when I was in the cemetery at St. Helena, 180 Boers, 3,000 kilometers.
Mm.
The last time they kissed their wives and said goodbye, that was the last time they ever saw, the father or the husband.
Yeah.
Why didn't they never ever brought those bones back to South Africa? It's just not understandable.
One of the interesting things about being a numismatist is that coins often reflect history. And I've got some old Kruger coins from 1892 to 1900. Sure. And these ones have actually been engraved and carved and holes put in them by Boers, and you can see the amount of time it must have taken to literally drill a hole or make a hole in the coin, and then they sort of made it around Kruger's head and stuff like that. Fascinating stuff, and these were done by Boer prisoners of war at St. Helena, largely. Coins are fascinating because they do reflect history. Now, look, I'm going to wrap up this live stream, Rudi, but I do just want to once again just let people know that the book Die die verschrikking wat verseg word, which I'll just put up on the screen now, will be made available. Rudy's going to very kindly do us a PDF copy of it, and it'll be in our Loving Life TV Forums PDF library, hopefully by the weekend, so that you can actually download that and actually read all these affidavits given by women at the time of the Boer War. So that's going to be a hugely significant document. And thank you, Rudi, for doing that for us.
So I just want to say for the English-speaking people, unfortunately, this is in Afrikaans. If you can read and understand Afrikaans, then I do it with great respect for those women that never ever had the privilege to tell their story, that had to die with that sorrow in their graves.
Well, I Keith said, "Wow, PDF copy, can't wait." What I'll ask publicly here is if anyone is able, when they've got the PDF copy in Afrikaans, if they're able to translate it into English, that'd be fantastic. We'll then actually put that up as an English copy of the PDF.
And if they can do me a favor, send a copy to Charles in England and tell him it's from Rudie Rousseau. And
you aren't talking about that King Charles, are you?
Yeah, King Charles. And if they ever wanted to do or to give a contribution, I was thinking when I looked at that statue in Allewal Noord, that is the way I will take that money, to go to the 55 I have visited, and to go and to clean them up nicely, to give the honor to those women and children that died under terrible circumstances.
Absolutely. Rudi, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And for the viewers, thank you so much. You're most welcome to contact me if you want to go on a Anglo-Boer War tour.
Okay, can you just tell us the best way for them to do that?
My cell phone number.
Get your pens out, guys. Yep, go ahead.
Is 082 536 1917. Hello? Scott? Maybe you can hear me. I'm just going to repeat my cell phone number. It's 082. Scott, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yep. Sorry, I was just
my number.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, my number is 082 536 1917.
Right. Okay, fantastic. I'm just looking for these Boer coins that I've got. I've got so many coins here. I've probably got the wrong. I've got these books full of old coins, and I haven't got the right one here. But I'll drag it out one of these days and show people. But they are fascinating. Alrighty, Rudi, thank you.
We'll have auction.
Thank you. And yeah, look, I'm going to go out tonight with. Hang on, let me go across here. I'm going to go out tonight with the theme song about the Bitterrender Commando, and I'm not talking about the group called Bitterrender at the moment. I'm talking about the Boers who, even after the main Boer group actually surrendered, there was a small commando of Bitterrenders who refused to surrender to the British, and this is dedicated to them. And this, of course, was during the closing stages of the Boer War. Have a great evening, everybody, and don't forget, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, there will be another live stream. Tomorrow night, I'm actually talking to the fellow who I was supposed to speak to the other night who had load shedding problems, and that's Emerald van Zyl, and we're going to be doing another follow-up on West Bank and the corruption they're involved in and stuff like that. So we do cover some really interesting subjects. Alrighty. Ciao for now, Rudi, and have a great evening, mate.
Sir, thank you so much, and have a good sleep.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye.
All right, guys, this is Bittereinders Commando. Here we go.